All right. We are live. For those who know how this goes, this is Ichabod. And for those who are going to be watching this, the recorded version, it's still Ichabod. Your host, Be Good, Brady Goodwin. Um, and I am delighted tonight to have a guest, someone that I've been checking out for quite a while. This is Derreck Bennett, the host of Atheologica. I think I was seeing the name of your YouTube channel during my days of am I going to deconvert publicly or am I going to keep this to myself? And I think I was seeing the name Atheologica, and it was almost scary to me to see the name because the name was bidding me, it was calling me to my future.
That's interesting.
I was like, if I watch this channel, what's going to happen to me?
What
um,
what was your first impression of my channel?
well, see, here's the thing. Because it was Atheologica, I didn't watch it until I was sure that I was ready to until I was sure I wanted the smoke. So I don't know why I felt safer watching people like Alex O'Connor, watching Justin's Unbelievable podcast. I felt safer watching that kind of stuff because it kept me closer to the shoreline in case I felt like I was drowning. There was something safe I could. So I didn't watch yours until I knew, yeah, this is where I'm going to stand.
Yeah.
And so by that time, I was already like amening everything you were saying.
Gotcha. Because you come over here, it's it ain't Alex O'Connor or genetically modified skeptic. And I respect those guys for what they do. And I think that their approach is necessary. But, I take my approach because that's just the niche that I'm here to fill.
Right.
Which is
yeah. How did you? I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but how did you decide? How did you figure out I'm going to play this role? And I'm not saying anything that you probably wouldn't say yourself. There's an old friend of mine. I don't even know if I call him a friend. He was a millionaire investor in the rap group that I was a part of, and he used to say, talking about the body of Christ, he said, we're the body of Christ. And he says, everybody's got to have an asshole. He said, that's me. And we're like, why? He said, because all this shit has to go through me. But it seems like in the counter apologetic space, you somehow chose that you're going to just be that guy that probably says what a lot of other people are thinking, but Derreck Bennett is going to say it. How did you decide that's going to be you?
I don't know if there was really any decision involved just because it's so inherently who I am.
Okay.
It is my nature that I have a very low tolerance for bullshit.
Mm.
So I'm here to call it out in whatever form I see it. I am someone who has been following these debates for so many years and looking at the claims of apologists and how they go about doing what they do that I'm just up to my ears, in their nonsense. Wow. So I'm not here to play around. I'm just going to call a spade, and that's it.
Okay. My questions, my interview style is I develop questions the more I hear you talk. You say you're not here to play games, but there's something very playful about the way you go about doing what you do.
Right.
So like somebody could get the wrong idea on both sides. One, this guy's not serious. The other side is like, why does this matter to you? You seem to take this very seriously. So I guess I'm curious, as you've been paying attention to what the apologists have said for so long and you've gotten fed up, what had you paying attention in the first place? Were you ever religious? Were you always irreligious? Were you God curious? What's your history with this?
Well, I'm blurry for some reason. Hey,
yeah, I saw
that. That didn't help any. Well, hold on just a second. I'm going to stop my cam and And
what's up to everybody in the chat? Stick around. I got some info I'd like to share with you guys.
Yeah, it didn't help a damn bit. We'll just deal with it.
It's all good. In the chat, if you can go and make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel, drop those comments. Shout out to everybody who's coming through. Okay.
So I was raised Christian as a child, and we had a very I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest version of this. We had a very unorthodox Christian belief, which we called physical salvation. We were universalists, even though we weren't aware of that label. We believed that in the end, Christ would save every last living soul. And because, if God is the Father and we are his children, no loving parent would consign their child to eternal punishment or eternal torment. So, people might go to hell impermanently, sort of like the Catholic idea of purgatory. But in the end, Christ would save every last living soul. And if you believed in Christ fully in this way, then he who believeth in me shall not die, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. We took that literally and believed that we would never die. We were immortal. And I'm sure that came with the idea that Christ would probably return within our lifetimes, spare us ever dying anyway. So anyway, that didn't take long to fall apart. I mean, I wind up losing my stepfather to cancer. And then eventually, my own mother, who believed this stuff, she was killed in a car accident.
Wow.
My grandparents, where this all began, they both passed, so
I'm curious. When you say where this all began, I guess the physical salvation, is there a larger group of people who believe this?
No, not that I'm aware of. My grandfather met some stranger so many years ago that I think the story is really foggy for me. But he had talked to some guy from whom he sort of gathered this idea, and I don't know if the physical salvation thing was part of it or not. Maybe just the universalist aspect of what we believed, but somehow that came into play. And so this all began with my grandfather on my mother's side. And but it was after losing my dad to cancer at age 12 that was like, okay, so this is not this does not comport with reality in any way. And so that's when I really began to question things. I didn't become an atheist overnight. That's not at all how that worked. I just realized that maybe not everything that we're told by our parents, our authorities, our culture even, maybe it's not all necessarily true. So maybe we need to seek out our own answers. And that's just what I've been doing for so many years. But it was really in my mid to late 20s that I really began investigating Christianity.
Okay.
And I found apologetics, Christian apologetics, very early on. There was a Wikipedia, which was in its infancy back then, had a link to a website by this James Patrick Holding of Tecton Ministries. He's not quite into the game as much as he used to be. He's a little quieter these days, which is probably best for him. But I found that stuff early on, and it taught me that some of the stuff I was learning early on was bull. You know what I mean? Like zeitgeist. Anything from a Acharya S or the Da Vinci Code or anything like that. He had a way of just cutting through the nonsense and you know what I mean?
Had that stuff influenced you in the years between 12 and your late 20s when you were
early on it did, but it didn't take long for me to kind of follow up on that because it wasn't enough for me. Being as inherently curious as I am, it wasn't enough for me to just read that and say, oh, so this is it. This is the truth. No, I needed to follow up and learn more. And
do you think your earlier experience of but you already had some beliefs that you found out, maybe I should have done a better job investigating this first. Then you get these other beliefs. Do you think the earlier experience kind of sets you in your mindset of, I can't just believe everything I hear?
Sure, probably. Yeah. I mean, I never really connected those dots, but I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. That's that you can't simply take at face value anything that you're told or anything that you read. You just can't, So even if you might be hoodwinked, you know what I mean, temporarily, eventually, if you do the work and you care enough to follow through on investigating these, whatever claim that crosses your path, you will eventually wade out the garbage and get to what's actually gold. So early on, I was introduced to Christian apologetics. But of course, the guy was just a blatant asshole. That already left a pretty bad taste in my mouth. But it didn't take long to realize that, okay, he's doing a pretty good job of debunking unsubstantiated claims from skeptics and that kind of thing. But he's tacking on a lot of his own fallacious BS. All of it, I realized early on that all of this is in terms of apologetics, it's emotionally driven. It's very protectionist in its ideology. It's putting the faith first, right, and everything else is second. So you're beginning essentially with the conclusion that your faith is true, and you'll do whatever you have to. You'll construct whatever argument you have to in order to protect that assumed conclusion. Any apologist can sit here and tell me until they're blue in the face that that's not what they're doing. And I'm calling bullshit. That's what all of them are doing. I've seen it time and time and time and time again. That is their whole modus operandi. And I've just seen it entirely too much to none of them are gonna fool me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
So you're learning from an apologist to be more skeptical of skeptics.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
But then at the same time, you're skeptical of the apologist who's helping you even understand that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So this just makes me want to ask, because I could imagine the person. I'm still in the stage of my deconstruction where I'm still thinking with two minds. And I think that's why some people like my channel, because I almost can still speak as the Brady that I was before I deconverted. So I'll ask you the question that somebody asked me. When I was deconverting, one of my good friends, popular Christian rapper, he asked me, he says, I hear your doubts. Do you ever doubt your doubts?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah. So as your skepticism helps you to kind of, like you said, weed through the bullshit, do you ever get to the point where you think maybe you're too skeptical, or is there such a thing?
I mean, there's definitely such a thing as hyper skepticism. I see some of these Christian apologists do that themselves when it comes to the evidence that's brought forth by people like me. I mean, it's strange. It's almost paradoxical even. There is such a thing as healthy skepticism, right? But then there's being hyper skeptical in order to reduce cognitive dissonance and confirm your own biases. So, when there's really just profound very compelling evidence for something like, say, biological evolution, and you're fighting like mad to deny that and just poke holes wherever you possibly can. I think that's a form of hyperskepticism. I think it's a form of hyperskepticism when people watch the news media, which I know you know, depending on what platform you're watching, you have to take into consideration the biases there.
Yeah.
But when all of these different outlets are telling you these are the conclusions of the general election, this person has won and this person hasn't, and you're having to develop all kinds of ridiculous theories as to how this just couldn't be. That's a form of hyperskepticism as well. So, I mean, you certainly need to. I don't know what it is about me. I feel like I'm pretty well tuned into reality, but you have to guard yourself against your own intuitions as well. If you're to ask me to sit down and determine how do I parse that, you know what I mean? How do I determine what is good and healthy skepticism and what is going beyond that? I don't know that I could sit here right now and tell you how I go about doing that. I just know that it's something I'm capable of doing, and I think a lot of us are, probably you included.
Yeah, appreciate that. So you develop one of the guys on my podcast, he talked about wanting to be a more biblical Christian, awaken the powers, his powers of skepticism, or his skeptical powers. Trying to be a better Christian made him more skeptical. And that ended up, by the time he was done following that, he ended up out of the faith. So in your late 20s, you become skeptical of the apologists. Were there any counter apologists that made you say, hey, I'm going to be the next generation of that, or I'm going to do what he's doing?
Robert M. Price.
Okay.
Robert M. Price. That was... This guy was, he was blowing the doors off of all of these apologetical arguments. I mean, he was a walking, and still is, a walking encyclopedia of biblical knowledge, but not just biblical knowledge, of ancient literature and mythology, in the broader ancient Mediterranean world. And I wasn't certain, he is also a mythicist, and I was never 100% sold on the mythicism idea that he often talks about. But other than that, I mean, he just I could tell this guy's really he's on top of it. He knows his stuff. So that was sort of my... Can
I just point out for the person who's watching, I want to just point out for the person who's watching that as you develop your skeptical powers, you were skeptical of the religion that was taught to you. A Christian apologist helped you to be skeptical of these skeptics. You get a hold of Robert M. Price, and you're not just gullibly swallowing whatever's being thrown at you. You're even taking the good and bad from Robert Price, saying what you consider to be good and bad. You like this from him. The mythicism you couldn't find. So for the person that says people are just looking for reasons to not believe, here you have Derreck Bennett sifting through all the stuff that's coming in from all the different sources, Christian and not, and responding to what resonates, what makes the most sense to him. Like, this is the process that people go through. So I just want people to understand what's happening here, because they always like to tell the story a different way.
And that's just it. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. That is what you have to do with every source that you come across, is you take the best and you leave the rest, and you broaden your horizons as much as possible by reading various scholars on these issues. And that's what, so, I mean, in the beginning, a lot of reading Price, but of course I eventually branched out and read other scholars and even followed up on the kinds of, like the works that he cited. I came across Richard Carrier fairly early on as well. But then, okay, so Carrier cites this particular Egyptologist on this issue. Well, let me read that actual Egyptologist and see what all that person has to say. So it was sort of this branching effect of, beginning, because people like Robert Price and Richard Carrier were kind of the loudest voices in the room. You know what I mean? So it was easy to come upon guys like that. But then I began to just sort of branch out and read wider scholarship in the field, even people I may have never had come across had I not really been probing pretty deeply to learn as much as I possibly could. So that's
why
just
were
it.
you probing so deeply? Like what was driving you to probe and to search and to read?
One, I am naturally inherently curious. I just want to know more, and I want to get it right. I am adamant about accuracy. I'm adamant. That doesn't mean that I have to be right all the time. You know what I mean? We're all human. We all make mistakes. I have been wrong about things in the past, and when I learn better, you know what I mean? It's like that saying, when you know better,
you do better. Yeah.
Right. But I do my damnedest to anything that I have to say, any claim that I make damn sure that I know what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Because I am, at the end of the day, I'm most concerned about truth. I just want to get to,
You just answered my next question. My next question was going to be, in all your searching, was there any part of you, no matter how small, that did it feel like, did you think that you were searching for God, or that God would meet you in that you would turn over a stone and say, aha, here's why I can believe X, or here's what I can believe? But I think you might have just answered it when you said you care about truth. That's what it was.
Right. That's it. Christianity, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where that just completely dissipated. That kind of occurred over I don't know. I'm questioning this stuff as early as adolescence, right? But when I really start discovering all these things in terms of comparative religion and just what the Bible really is, as opposed to this, idolization that people have of it, Christianity went by the wayside, by at least, I mean, I was convinced that it was not true. The Bible is not the word of any God, at least by my, by my late 20s, I would say.
Okay.
But the God idea was something like the idea of a God outside of biblical tradition, whether that's deism or some general form of theism or pantheism or what have you. These were all concepts that I looked into and entertained. So that I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I didn't close the book on the Bible and say, well, that's nonsense and there's no God.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's not what happened.
Interesting.
I kind of clung to that idea for some time. And I thought that atheism was sort of a pessimistic view. That's like, I can see not believing in Christianity, but to just completely disregard the notion of there being at least some kind of God, that didn't initially click with me at all.
So in that stage, were you praying? Like, so what was, okay.
No, not praying. I don't think I believed a whole lot in any kind of personal God.
Gotcha.
To whom you could really pray so much. But It was a couple of things happened. One, I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I get introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in my late 20s as well, and that's where it's really pushed on me. This idea of coming to believe in a higher power,
Gotcha.
whatever conception of a higher power you might have. So it was almost, it was absolutely incumbent upon me to try and determine what do I believe here? I'm literally falling apart. My whole life is falling apart. I am plagued with this deadly, life-shattering illness. What do I believe about God? What do I believe about this? Because they are making this, AA made this something absolutely just critical. So that's when that's what kind of pushed me to really delve into the God idea in general. And like I said, I was not an atheist, but I wasn't exactly sure what I believed. And if anything, I was probably agnostic, you know. Though, like I said, I also entertained ideas like deism and theism and pantheism and whatnot. It was when I began cracking the books of actual atheist authors like Richard Dawkins, Dan Barker, these kinds of guys, that I finally came to understand that all atheism was disbelief.
Yeah.
It wasn't making the absolute positive, claim that there is no God. And we know that for a fact, because how could you? Right? So it was simply a matter of disbelief. Of course, the corollary of that is that you believe that there is no God, but you don't know it for a fact. So once I came to understand that was, that's when I realized, okay, so the atheism thing is, frankly, it was just making a lot more sense. And especially as I delved into the various philosophical arguments for and against the existence of a God. And now at this time, I'm considering this independently of whether or not Christianity is true, right? Christianity's already gone by the wayside. It's like, okay, so yeah, that's not true. But is there a God? I struggled with that. But it was also a very stimulating journey as well. And I have to say, it's interesting that I'm talking about this now. I was just reading, this guy is a friend of mine on Facebook. Ben Evan is his name. Ben, if you're watching this, hello. But he shares a lot of stuff in the Myth Vision public group and the Myth Vision podcast group. And I was just reading before this show, he was talking about how a post he shared by this David Bentley, if I remember right, who just skewers atheists for really only attacking a straw man, just a caricature of what God is. And I read this and I'm thinking, the irony is delicious here because this post itself is a straw man. This is total bullshit. Atheists like me, we really did consider theistic ideas outside of Christianity and still came to disbelieve. Some new atheists, because that's who's really coming under attack in this post, was the new atheists. Victor Stinger was among the new atheists, and he absolutely, if you read his books, he is dealing with God concepts outside of just a strict Christian point of view. So that post is just, I laughed at it because it's just wrong. So when you hear my story, apologists, know that people like me really did. I clung to the God idea, and I investigated it, and I carefully considered philosophical arguments for and against some kind of God outside of the biblical tradition. And at the end of the day, I found the arguments for God's existence lacking.
Yeah.
And the arguments against pretty compelling.
So how long has it been since you embraced atheism?
Atheism. So I would say I'd pretty much embraced atheism by my early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, knowing how old you are, I don't know how long that's been.
I'm 45 now.
Okay. So you're going on 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a goddamn heathen.
The ground hasn't opened up to swallow you. Lightning hasn't struck, unless maybe you used to be African American and now you're just like powder. Seems like lightning hasn't struck you. So how is it that you've survived these 15 years without faith? Matter of fact, maybe you can speak to this. One of the things that the theists would often say is atheists live by faith too. It takes more faith to believe there's no God. Yeah, high roll just said so much. It takes more faith to believe there's no God than to believe there's a God. Are you living by faith, Derreck Bennett? And if not, if so, how so? If not, how do you make it without faith? What successes can you speak to, or has it just been a dark cloud over your life ever since?
Just a dark cloud of sure nihilism. Nothing matters anymore. No, look, it's I don't live by the kind of faith that they're talking about, right? But there are fundamentally two different kinds of faith. All right, so there is belief in fantastical things in the absence of any compelling evidence. All right, that's more in line with what we're talking about when we discuss religious faith. And I don't live by that kind of faith, no. But then there's another kind of faith, which is just reasonable expectation based on probability, right?
Bayesian.
Yeah, sure. My friends and family and loved ones, I have faith in them. But that is, there's an evidential aspect to that. There's a reasoned aspect to that. It's because I know by experience, that they have been there for me. What good reason do I have to doubt that, if I were in a time of need, that they wouldn't be, that's what, we are naturally inclined toward, love and care and empathy. So you can count on that, because there's good reason to. There's experiential evidence for that kind of thing. So yeah, I live according to what I would call reasonable faith. And I almost want to throw up in my mouth that William Lane Craig made that the title of his blog and podcast, because he has no right to it. But if we're talking about legitimate, reasonable faith, then yeah, I'm down with that 100%. And so no, my life isn't just a dark cloud. And I realize that there is a nihilistic aspect to atheism, if we're being honest about it, right? Because in the long run, the earth is going to be swallowed up by the sun in billions of years from now, when the sun begins to run out of its energy and it swells, into a red giant. If we have not become an interstellar species, we'll be obliterated. My own death is, I'm 45 now. What have I got? Maybe another, 30 years left on this planet. I don't think there's anything beyond that wall of death for me. And we as a species, on the cosmic scale, don't matter. We don't. The universe will soldier on just fine without us. So that's just the cold, hard reality, which again, I don't know is true, but I hugely suspect is true. So there is a nihilistic aspect to atheism, and you have to admit that. You have to be able to admit that, yeah, morality probably isn't something that is woven into the fabric of the cosmos as this sort of objectively what's the word I'm looking for?
Absolute.
It's not absolute. It doesn't ontologically exist, right? The thing that makes that bearable is, understanding existentialist philosophy.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe our lives and maybe our very existence as a species doesn't matter on a cosmic scale, but it matters in the here and now.
Yeah.
It matters to us.
Yeah.
It's the lives we live, the experiences that we have with friends and neighbors and loved ones, that's not merely illusory. That is real, even if it is, transient, even if it is something that is not going to make the trek of eternity. It matters now. It matters now. That's the thing that so there's a big difference between just outright hopeless nihilism and what you could call existential nihilism.
Yeah. So this is not a pushback. This is just a little shove for the fun of it. Whenever I hear someone say our lives don't matter in the grand scheme of the universe, I always respond the same way. And it's similar to what you said about knowing that there's a God. We can't know.
Right.
In the same way, I don't think we can know that our lives don't matter in the grand scheme of the universe. We have no idea what's going on here. And so because we don't know, I reserve a little space to make myths. Like, what if what's going on is, and you fill in a blank, this is a simulation, or there's some kind of way that, some kind of meta narrative that allows me to still say, maybe there is still reason, but we can't know it at the end of the day. At least I know we can't know at this point. And so I'm curious, do you ever allow yourself to make any myths? Do you have any, what if this is what's going on here? Do you ever engage in any of that? Or do you just, you're set with there's no reason, there's no meaning, this is it, I'm just here for now?
Well, remember, I did interject there for a moment by saying, this is not something I absolutely know to be the case. It's just what I hugely suspect is probably true, right? So I'm not saying that I know this for a fact, but I am saying that on atheism, okay, on the atheistic view, that's what that entails if there is no God, right? Which is something that I'm not 100% convinced of, but I think is probably right. I think is probably true. That's what atheism entails. So, I am living according to, I guess, what you could call a probabilistic, worldview or position. But do I hold out hope that maybe there is something more going on here? I mean, that's just it. I'd like to think that, like, for instance, I was watching this, I think it was a neuroscientist who was talked about how people are able to recall certain experiences after death, after the brain has shut down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But they are so what I'm looking for, they are they're brought back. They are not, they weren't permanently dead. They were momentarily dead. So they're revived, and they are able to recall experiences, things that were going on in the room around them after their brains had shut down.
Okay.
What does that mean? Does that mean that consciousness, that it has some kind of existence beyond our physical selves or beyond our our functioning brains? Well, I'd sure like to think so. I wish that to be the case. I absolutely do. But then again, is that something, is there something going on there that is still transient, is still temporary? Like maybe they're able to recall some things that are going on because the cells in their brains are still functioning, right? Even if the heart and the brain have flatlined, the cells are not completely dead, or else you wouldn't be able to revive them at all. So is there a sixth sense, so to speak? Not something woo or supernatural or magical or anything like that. These are the things I'm asking myself.
Gotcha.
Because I'd like to think that we have something akin to a soul that lives beyond our physical coil. But the rational part of me, or maybe the skeptical part of me, is entirely too cautious about wishful thinking.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these people don't realize either, is that, and I tried to explain this in my last video when I talked about UFOs and the existence of
I was just about to go there in a minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's, to me, it's not about what I want to be true. What did I say earlier? I care about truth, right? Yeah. And I want to just, whatever that is, I want to have the courage and the fortitude to look that in the face for whatever that is, regardless of whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
So I'm not out to prove something that I want to believe is true. I'm out to get to what do I think is most probably true. Yeah. That's what matters to me. And on the whole, I don't think that's what matters to most apologists.
Ouch. I've said this recently, and I think I still hold to this. I think if there is anything like a God, I think this God would have to honor and respect and maybe even reward the hustle of atheists, because I think these are people who, because I know my hustle, I know what my heart and my mind went through. As I'm hearing you, I'm like, oh, same. It was because I cared for truth that I could no longer amen the Bible. Even if the Bible turns up being true in some weird kind of way, I would think the God of the Bible would have to, if this is a truth-loving being, say, but I respect your search. I respect the reasons why you couldn't accept this.
You had intellectual honesty and integrity, and I appreciate that, and I respect that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And for the believing person, for the theist, to not be able to respect that, not be able to say, that's commendable.
Right.
For the atheist to, oh, you can't accept this? It's not I won't accept this. I can't. Right. I would be lying to myself to call something true that I don't believe is true. Yeah. So on that line, you talked about the video you just did about aliens and the UFOs and the people who've said, hey, we've got government secrets. You challenged apologists saying, hey, we don't just second guess your claims. I'm second guessing this guy's claims that I would even want this to be true, that there's life on other planets. I'm curious, as you go through that, have you ever come across any videos by Billy Carson?
No.
Never heard his name?
Mm-mm.
Okay, you know Danica Patrick.
That's the female NASCAR.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's got a podcast. She had Billy Carson on. Billy Carson is I think he might be a quantum physicist, or maybe he's got some kind of background, African-American guy. Sounds very smart. But I watched, somebody sent me a video of his because they're eating everything this guy is saying. And he starts off on a very good foot, just in terms of just trying to put things together. Truth seeker, like you just talked about. And then he turns this corner and he gives ear to every wind of doctrine, every hair of, but he starts pulling on the things that you normally talk about. He goes into Egyptology. He goes into all of these different ancient ideas and basically tries to show how Jesus is just the latest iteration of these other motifs, but it's not like, and therefore it can't be true. It's, and therefore there's truth to this. Like there's a kernel of truth to this that we just all need to get back to. I would love to see you debunk a Billy Carson video, because there's a lot there to debunk. I just Googled one fact from him and I could spend an hour debunking that one fact. But you've never heard of him, so I won't spend too much time. But
well, that sounds, tell me if I'm wrong, but that sounds a little bit like the C.S. Lewis approach, where, you know, C.S. Lewis, he understands that there are other figures in ancient history that resemble Jesus in some way. And so how do we deal with that? Well, Jesus was the true myth, right? He was the true myth. Myth became fact. Right. I'm actually thinking about doing a video addressing that very apologetic. So if this Carson guy has something that's sort of in that vein.
Well, no, see, he wouldn't say it all culminates in Jesus, or that Jesus is just, he would say the people who wrote about Jesus stole true things from the past and applied them to Jesus. But and that happened generation after generation. Jesus was just one iteration of that.
I see.
So there is a Christ figure. Jesus, they tried to apply that Christ thing from the past to Jesus.
Well, that's really ass bonkers.
So any Billy Carson fans in the chat? Anybody up on him? I don't get. I don't.
Okay,
so.
Billy.
But so yeah, I want to. Anybody in the chat? Let me just do this real quick, if you don't mind, Derek. A good friend of my channel, Tim Mills. Are you familiar with Tim Mills?
Who the hell is Tim Mills? Sounds like some kind of that sounds like one of those heathens we were talking about earlier. Like Tim damn Mill. I know who Tim is.
Okay, hold on. Let me. How do I pull this up? So Tim Mills, he has a channel called Harmonic Atheist, and he's been doing sort of what I'm doing right now for years, just interviewing people who have lost faith. And he's got a channel, over 100 videos, where he just has people come on. I was on there asking them about their deconversion story. Well, Tim is now trying to go full time with his YouTube channel. And I should have had this prepared. I want to present this so people can see, but I don't know exactly how to do this. But Tim is raising funds, and he actually has somebody who is going to help him out. And somebody came on and basically just told Tim, I will match any donation that you get up to $17,000. So that means any time somebody gives a donation to what Tim is doing, this person will match it all the way up to $17,000. So let me just share this real quick so you guys can see how you can actually support. I would love to go on and support. I typically end these sessions by having people super chat and ask questions. I did see one super chat, so I am going to go back and read that. But I want to try to share this quick. Bear with me, guys. Present, share screen. Window. Okay, here it is. Can you guys see this? That's visible, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he says, there he is, Harmonic Atheist in the chat. Tim, can you drop the link to your is it PayPal or to your GoFundMe where people can actually go support? I would love if we could just show some love, support Tim Mills. He's got an excellent channel, tons of interviews that help people think through and know that they're not alone when they're deconstructing and deconverting. Tim, if you could drop that link. I was trying to have it ready, but I had a lot going on over here. If you guys can go through and just show some support, show some love. Tim's been working hard. This brother has 4 kids. He's holding it down and trying to do this full time. Would love to just support him. Anybody who, if you're watching this and you're not in the live, I'm going to put the link for that below. You can go and support Tim. You can also go and support Derreck Bennett. Derreck Bennett also has the channel Atheologica. I told him I'm going to overtake him in about 7 years at this rate because somebody came on and said, there's a guy who curses a whole lot. I can't watch his channel. If you love a lot of cursing and great reasoning, check out Atheologica. Derreck, anything you want to plug, any upcoming shows you want to plug so that people can check out what you got going on?
I don't have a great deal in the pipeline right this moment. I've started a new job here recently because I've got to supplement my income with a real job. But do check out my channel, Atheologica. It's I've got a lot of hard-hitting stuff there. You'll learn a lot.
I've learned a lot.
Rich with sources, from scholarship, that kind of thing. You'll see just how anal I am about making sure that that so much of what I say is actually sourced well. Also, you can follow me on social media. I'm very active on Facebook, not with a lot of other things. I've only got time for so much, but follow me on Facebook, Derreck Bennett, as you see the name spelled there. I'm a fun guy. Yeah, check all that out.
I think the reason why I love your channel, Derreck, is because as sardonic and sarcastic as you are just, your comedic timing is excellent. Like, I don't understand the way you put stuff together and drop your punchlines. Do you rehearse that kind of stuff? Like,
well, a lot of times I am going off of a script.
Okay.
Not every time I do a video, but a lot of the time I am going off of a script. But I did acting when I was in high school. I did theater. I did speech and debate. So
that explains a lot.
I've had a lot of training.
Okay.
Over the years, and yeah, a lot of comedy is acting. So it's there is a performance aspect to what I do as well.
Good stuff. James sent a super chat. Thank you, James. Love you, bro. $10. He says, thanks for the content. Be good. Thank you, bro, for rocking out. So another super chat down here. If you guys have any questions real quick you want to throw in for me or Derreck, please do. I'm not going to ask you to super chat your question because I would love if you would take whatever support you were going to share tonight. Go support Tim Mills and support Derreck Bennett. We leave the faith. One of the things I've never done after leaving the faith is talk about the church asking for money because it costs money to do things. But I knew when I left the faith, I started putting my money in other places. And so I support people that I appreciate what they do. So
Yes,
if
you
you
do.
appreciate Derreck Bennett, show some love, his Patreon, support Tim Mills. Let's not just expect that these things are going to just keep, happening. If you don't support it, it'll go away. So please support these people that you see. And then I saw Michael Apple trying to get you past Derreck's sub count little by little. Appreciate you, man.
You think I'm sardonic? Have you read Michael Apple much?
Yo, Michael is on my page on Facebook. Yo, I crack up almost all day long. I don't know what kind of job you have, Michael, that allows you to just slide through and comment on all the posts.
That man was a rich find.
Surely. I'm just going to read a couple of these comments. 0125 AR says, give your atheist tithe. There you go. Any questions for me or Derreck before we wrap this up? Tim, did you drop that link so people can support? He says he does remote work unsupervised. Why did they give you a computer?
Unsupervised sounds damn right.
All right, I'm not seeing questions unless you guys are typing right now. I used to teach online, and I know to wait a while because sometimes people are typing their questions up. So we're going to hold just for a second if anybody's typing a question. This is a good night to ask a question because I'm not doing the super chat thing. Question, Chris Billups says, have you ever heard the truth address Ravi Zacharias' scandal? What do you think about his apparent silence about that? That's a very interesting question. Derreck, if you don't know, you probably don't know who the truth is, but I'm sure you know who Ravi Zacharias is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the truth is a Christian rapper that my rap group actually brought into the Christian rap world. He was on our rap label, on our record label for years. So, and then the truth actually was going around with Ravi Zacharias doing conferences and things like that. Why do I think the truth has not spoken on it? It could very well be, I don't know. I haven't spoken the truth in years. It could be that Truth had his own, issue with, what happened in his situation with his quote unquote fall in his ministry. So he might feel like, I don't know if he might feel like, who is he? Or people might say, who is he to speak about Ravi Zacharias? I don't know. I have no idea why. Yeah, I couldn't say. Basically, Derreck, I'm just going to read one question it looks like for you. Derreck, do you think near-death experiences would be more impressive with smashed, brainless heads? It seems these near-death experiences still have their brains and heads intact.
Yes, I mean, truth be told, if their heads and their brains were completely smashed, and yet they came back in some form and said, "Hey, right after my entire head had been smashed, I was watching you guys throw up on the floor at the side of it." That would be really impressive. That would tell me that, damn, even when you get your damn head smashed in, you kind of know what's going on. So you must have some kind of soul that is independent of the body. So I think probably, these scientists in lab coats, in their labs who study this stuff, neuroscientists and whatnot, probably need to get to smashing heads. That's where we need to take this research. Hawk smash all the way.
Wow. I'm not advocating for any of this here.
Well, we won't know, Billy, until we beat your brains in. So we got to do what we got to do. It's in the name of science.
Wow. All right. I think we are. Another question here. Do you agree that the cross is a hate symbol? Wow.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. It depends on who's waving that flag.
See, my Christian mind would pop up and say, yeah, it was a hate symbol. God hates sin. But it's also a love symbol because God loved us enough to put his son on it. But I would like to hear how you would work it out as a hate symbol, because the Christian message is, for God so loved the world that this happened.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would not associate the cross with being a hate symbol, unless we're talking about the Ku Klux Klan. Then but meaning and symbols are in the eye of the beholder, and of course the eye or the like I said, whoever's waving that particular flag.
Did I miss a question? I don't think so. All right. Last call for alcohol. Or last call for you thinking of taking this show live one of these days? Hey, look, I enjoy Derreck's wit. I enjoy his mind. I would do this anytime. So, yeah. All right. I'm scrolling. And Tim, I'm still looking for that link. But if you guys go to Harmonic Atheist on YouTube, he has all the information there on how you can support. So please, please support. How to counter apologetics, primarily with facts or with humor.
Well, if you're asking me, both.
Okay.
I use facts and solid reasoning and a whole lot of humor, because some of the stuff you really do have to laugh at. I mean, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, and I think it deserves to be exposed for just how absurd and ridiculous it is. So, I use humor as a way to entertain and as a weapon.
Wow. Have you ever been stumped by a apologist or a theist question or line of argument?
You could say, because a lot of what they do, they're like O.J. Simpson defense attorneys, right? They're many of them are very adept at initially impressing you with their rhetoric. And so it's almost like a lot of them place before you these almost fun little and somehow also irritating Rubik's cubes. And you already suspect that when you've experienced as much apologetics as I have, based on experience, right? We're talking about experience and probability. So you already suspect there's something about this that's probably fucked. And how can you go about unfucking it? That's what a lot of counter apologetics really is. So you may be initially unsure how to respond to something or whether or not what they're saying is right. And I don't just assume automatically that they must be wrong, unless it's just something I know for a fact is wrong. I don't just assume that they must be wrong, but I am. It's automatically suspect, just based on experience. So that's why I don't. That's why I don't care to have. I don't care to do live debates, because I may or may not know. You know what I mean? Whether or not what they're saying is, if it is fallacious, or if so, why it's fallacious. But if you give me time, I can typically, if it is something that is entirely fallacious or just factually wrong, given time, I can determine that. So, so have I seen anything that has stumped me like permanently? No, I don't think so. But they may stump me, temporarily on occasion, until I really roll back my sleeves and dig in there and determine what's going on.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, man, Tim, I was just while Derek was talking, I was listening and searching for your links. I saw you say, "Sorry, that was jumbled. Let me redo that," but I didn't see anything before or after that. So I'm encouraging y'all, go check out Tim Mills, Harmonic Atheist, on YouTube. Yeah, sorry, man. I really wanted to put that link up here, but you guys can go check out his page. We're going to end it there. Derreck, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm sure you see it in your comments. You help people think through these issues. Even me, like there's sometimes I wake up on Sunday morning and my Sunday morning service will be watching Atheologica, just watching you work through something. And it just kind of helps me, like you just said, kind of unfucking my own. Like there are ways that I think through things that I'm like, how do I unthink that? Oh, okay, that's how I get out of that. That's how I stop thinking that way. That's how so I appreciate you, and hope you feel the love. Hope you get more love. And yeah, till next time, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Talking with you is always a pleasure, Brady. Always, sincerely.
Indeed. All right, y'all. Thanks for sliding through in the chat. If you're watching this on the recorded, please leave a comment and like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time.